Yeah. As far as investing, hearing you say that kind of reminded me when I first got out of grad school and we had done so much reading, like so the reading load was so heavy that I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm just looking forward to like spending the next couple of years never looking at a book. Like it was that intensive. And, and obviously like, that faded. And one of the things that like, I think people would just, it would be good for you simply to have like a reading routine, whether you have one or two or three books that help you stay just educated and relevant on any number of topics. Like I think that's just something that a lot of people aren't doing nearly as much. But one of the things that you mentioned, some of our clients, they haven't really had impressive salaries or they haven't really made much. And I'm always just amazed at how well some of them have done at saving. Like it's, maybe it's out of necessity. Maybe it's knowing that like, hey, like I don't make that much. Here's my ceiling. I know what it is. And this is what I have to work with. And I'm always amazed at the other side of it. We have some clients who've managed to make a lot of money. Their annual income is quite high and they have very little in savings. And I think, you never want to put people into a box, but, I was wondering, maybe you could address this a little bit. Why is it that like when the engineers come in or certain people, they have certain personality types, you can almost predict what they have and how well they've saved. And then you have somebody who comes in who makes $500,000 a year and that person is in sales and they have nothing. Like, what is it about those two personality types that,
what's interesting is I think that different industries, oftentimes they attract a certain person. I remember 5 years ago, I went to an event. I was invited to this group of like the top 10 financial advisors that were a part of one of the IMOs, independent marketing companies that we're a part of. And I'll never forget sitting in the room, listening to the other 9 advisors who are all in their 50s and 60s talk. And all of us were not just similar in our communication style, but we had similar interests. We all had houses with 10 or more acres. We all had, large breed dogs. We all were big on family. So what's so interesting is that even though we were in the same career, a lot of our hobbies and our interests were the same. But what goes along with that is, as you said, Yelisey, when you and I run into somebody that's a salesperson, whether they're selling manufacturing, whether it's data, whether they're selling communication plans, most salespeople are not savers. Most salespeople are spenders. And I don't know if it's because they feel like they work harder for commissions than maybe an engineer that has that big salary where it's not guaranteed. It's really based on how many calls you made and how you delivered that presentation. But it does seem like most salespeople are eternal optimists. And they think, you see a lot of real estate agents, they make $200,000-$300,000 a year and they're 65 and they might have, $1 million in their retirement, which if you think about it, it's only 3 times what their salary was, for over 30 years or maybe the last 10 years, where you get an engineer that they made $65,000-$75,000 a year and they walk in, they've got $1.5 million or 3 million or $5 million. So I think there are careers that don't just draw us based on our skill set, but also based on our habits and personality. And so one of the things that you and I were talking about was average salaries per state, per age. If you want to touch on that, I think that's interesting to people.
Yeah, well, I don't think it comes as a surprise to anyone that typically the older you are, the more you earn. And on average in Minnesota, since we're in Minnesota, I know that we have listeners all over the country, but in Minnesota, if you're under the age of 25, your average salary is, let me take a look at this, $42,000. It almost doubles by the time you get to from the age of 25 to 44, and then it peaks at $94,000 for those between the age of 45 to 64. So we're going to talk about Social Security in just a few minutes here. But the reason why that's important is Social Security is based on your highest 35 years, 35 working years. So, we have a lot of conversations on income planning and whether or not somebody should get a part-time job in retirement and what the overall effect is on their Social Security benefit. Chances are the older you are, the more you're making on average, right? You've been in your career a little bit longer. You have more skills, more experience. So generally you make a little bit more money. And people are often wondering, like, how does that affect my Social Security in retirement if I if I continue working, if I get a part-time job? Well, because it's based on those highest 35 years, you actually have the potential to increase your benefit even after you've filed. Now, we know that the cost of living adjustment increases your benefit. Every October it's announced. By January, your benefit is adjusted. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actually increasing your benefit based on the amount you've paid in. So if you're replacing one of those 35 years, even in retirement, even after you've already filed your Social Security, you have the opportunity to increase your Social Security benefits. But conversely, the opposite is true. We actually have a number of people that are working in retirement and they're not replacing one of those 35 years. And the challenge for them here is, hey, here I am. I'm working in retirement. I have this job. I have this earned income. I'm paying into the system. I still have to pay my FICA taxes, right? I still have to do that, but I have no opportunity or possibility of increasing my Social Security benefit because I'm not replacing one of those 35 years.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that Dave Ramsey says in relation to salary is that your income is your greatest wealth generator. And I think when we meet with people, one of the things that I've noticed is when they get into a spot where they've got big commitments eating up a large portion of their income. As an example, if you're not familiar with Dave Ramsey, he's one of the probably top gurus in the country for really helping people free up their cash, pay off debt, live debt-free lives, which I think bad debt, you want eliminated. There's good debt, like when you have a home mortgage that's under 4%, that's good debt, in my opinion. But one of the things he talks about is your income being your wealth generator. And I think what's hard is when we get people in and their housing takes up more than 30% of their income, or their housing and vehicles takes up 50 or 60%. And now they can't just sell the car because maybe they're upside down, or they don't want to sell the house, but they bought a bigger house than they can afford. And so one of the things that we really recommend to people is make sure that you follow margins when it comes to setting your life up. When you purchase a house, in my opinion, it should be less than 25% of your take-home pay. When you buy vehicles, it should be less than, let me say it this way, you shouldn't be buying vehicles that are the same amount as your annual income. You should be thoughtful in these things. So your income is one of your greatest wealth generators. And one of the things that we see in people that have been successful saving for retirement is that they live on a smaller portion of their assets than those that really didn't do a good job saving.